Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this webinar on how to use GMAT Sentence Correction. In this webinar, we're going to talk about the meaning-based approach that E-gmat pioneered about 9 years back and is now starting to become probably the standard in the industry with regards to approaching GMAT SC. We were the first ones to say GMAT Sentence Correction is not about grammar, it's about meaning and logic, and now people are starting to come around this. And then if you go and look at GMAT Club, you're going to find hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of success stories on the Share GMAT Experience portal that talk about, that vouch for this meaning-based approach. Your main host in this webinar is going to be Pal Tandon, who's the original author of this meaning-based approach. And so again, overall, fairly application-focused webinar. And to make sure that you're ready for this webinar, we did send a few video lessons your way. The video lessons were on verb ing, modifiers, verb ed phrases, and so on and so forth. If you've not gone through these video lessons, they are a part of your free trial. Log into your E-gmat account, you get dropped right into the free trial, and you can watch these video lessons over here. We also have free webinars from time to time. We are starting a series on how did people get into a certain business school. This is what I call as a bare all series, where people will students will talk about, and these are current admits and class of 2022. Well, they'll talk about how did they position their candidacy to a top B school, and how did they get admitted, secure an admit, and how did they get scholarships. So we have one on Tuesday, not Saturday, but Tuesday on 7th of April at 8:30 a.m. You can click on register now for that. And then we have a couple of upcoming free webinars. We have a free webinar on number properties tomorrow. It's a brand new webinar. So if you've attended one of our number properties webinars, this is not that. This is brand new. It's completely redesigned. And we'll talk about some very critical process skills in this webinar. So that's tomorrow, 24 hours from now. You can click on the register now button. And then we have a free webinar on GMAT reading comprehension. That's next Saturday, a week from now. In this webinar, we look at some key reading strategies that you need to master to ace GMAT RC. And by the way, yes, you can ace GMAT RC in just 10 days. Okay, with that, I'd like to get a profile of this group as a whole. And to do that, we ask a couple of leading questions. One is, when do you plan to take the test? And the second is, what is your target GMAT score? Let's get the second question over here. So, very few people are planning to take the test in the next 15 days, presumably because you can't take the test, right now. But in about 10 days or so, you should be able to. But essentially, we have quite a few people who plan to take the test in 16 to 30 days. There are about 35 people over here, but half the class hasn't taken a date as of yet. And we also have quite a few folks who want to take the test in the next 45 days. If you're someone who's fairly short of your GMAT, your target GMAT score, and if you need help creating a study plan, do let us know as we go into the next screen. We'll be happy to share a link to do a one-on-one session with one of our counselors. Now, with regards to the target GMAT score, biggest group, about half of you are aiming for that score of 730 to 750. Many of you are in that 760 or higher, or 710 or 720 bracket. But 10% of you are in that 600 to 700 bracket. That's really good. With that, let's go right into the webinar pane. And the screen at this point in time should have changed for you. And if you guys see this slide which says, why should you aim for a score of 730 or higher, select yes. If you don't see that slide, select no. All right, pretty much everyone can see this. So I'm going to really just start with this. Getting to a 730 is hard. It's harder, even with you guys now being at home. There's less variety in life. You still have to work, and I'm hoping many of you still have to work. And on top of that, you have to study as well. So it's hard, but I want to make sure that I share some data with you which motivates you to get to that score of 730 or higher. So there are three reasons why you should aim for that score of 730 or higher. One is, if you look at top B schools, even at this particular time, top B schools now require a score of 730 or higher. The second thing is if you look at scholarships, uh, 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 most of the scholarships that are awarded to students today, they're awarded to students who score 730 or higher. So B schools in the US offer about $350 million worth of scholarship. More than 50% of that money, based on our estimates, goes to students who get to those scores. Um, and then the third reason, probably the most underappreciated reasons, if you look at the delta in total earnings between those who actually get to a tier 1 school versus those who get to a tier 2 school, what you're going to find is that delta is the highest that it has ever been over the last 10-year period. And so essentially these 30 points, 700 versus a 730, could lead to a difference of $500,000 in earnings. Okay, so let me just explain each of these points one by one. So here's a table that shows how the median scores have changed at top B schools from 2014 to 2018. And what you're going to notice in this table is two things. One, Harvard and Stanford are not there. Why? Because even in 2014, they were at that 730 mark. Second, most of the top schools are getting to that 730 mark. According to Poets and Quants, and according to the stats that the schools themselves publish, for 23 out of the top 25 schools, median scores increased. At MIT and Columbia, 80% of the admitted class had scores of 700 or higher. Now, this is where MIT and Columbia actually share those results. Other schools don't even share. So this could be prevalent even at other schools. But essentially what these schools are saying is if you don't have a 700, don't even bother applying. And this is despite the fact that between 2014 and 2018, there was a 15% estimated decline in the number of test takers over there. So again, Mark Either says, he says, bottom line is that only the best of best have the shot at getting into some of these schools. And this is not limited just to the top 25. If you look at, the four dark bullet points over here, the black bullets, you're going to find that, to even 26 to 30, this trend continues to be there. The second reason is and here's some anecdotal data over here. One of our former students, Nishant, one of the most popular success stories on YouTube. He was rejected by Tuck and a bunch of other schools at 690. Tuck is a really good school. They give you feedback as to why they reject you. So Tuck and Smeal told him, we love your candidacy, but your GMAT score is not enough. It's not out there. Then in round 2, he improved his GMAT score, and he not only got admits, but he got multiple full fellowships. Yes, and he's now studying at Columbia. Pravi, very similar story. 680 applied to many schools in R2, did not get a single interview invite. Just 7 hours before the interview deadline, she sent her updated score of 740, and within 6 hours, she got 5 interview invites. She got multiple scholarships, and again, she's currently studying at Kellogg. Krishnakant, again, this is a really telling story. 680 in round 2, rejected by multiple schools. 720 in round 3, not round 2, round 3. Got full fellowships from 4 B schools. He's currently studying at Georgia Tech, as you can really see over here. So bottom line is, when it comes to admissions, your GMAT score is way more important now than it ever was, or it has been till date. Now, E-gmat has got about $28 to $29 million worth of scholarships every year. And so based on the data that we get, we've been able to estimate that when it comes to the total scholarship money, which is about $350 million, out of that total scholarship money, a good chunk of it goes to people who get to that 730 or higher score, regardless of whether you're applying to a top B school or a tier 2 school. So based on our estimates, 55% of that money goes to people who get to a score of 740 or higher, and about 80% of that goes to people who score a 710 or higher. What it really means, if you do the math, and this is simple math, is if you get to the 740 score, you probably should get a 40 grand scholarship if you choose your B schools properly. And based on my discussion with the admission officers, there are 2 factors that impact scholarships. One is your GMAT score. The second is how much they like you during the interview. Okay. Here's some anecdotal data. Mansi, one of our students who got into Harvard, Stanford, INSEAD, Wharton, and Kellogg, she scored a 770, got multiple full fellowships, 90,000 scholarship from Harvard. She's currently studying at Harvard. Victor got a full ride from Ross and Keenan Flagler. It's about 142 grand worth of scholarship with a score of 770. Kong Bui got about 4 full fellowships. He's studying at Ohio Fisher, and he just didn't get a full fellowship from Ohio Fisher. In addition to that, he also got an assistantship, which meant that he was paid $1,700 a month to study over there. There's another set of data points. We've already talked about Nishant, how he got a full ride, Pravi, as well as Krishnakant over here. What do I mean by R2 and R3? When you're applying to a business school, you can apply in multiple rounds, and round R1 is round 1, R2 is round 2, which is typically around early January, and R3 is typically around March, which has been delayed now to May, given the COVID situation. And there's another example of a student who scored a 710, applied to Ross and Columbia, did really well at the interviews, but was waitlisted by both schools. Then he reached out to the schools, asked them, hey, what happened? I think we really connected during the interview. The schools told him, your GMAT score is not there. He didn't even have to reapply. He just attempted the GMAT again, improved to 750. He not only secured an admit from both these schools, but he also got scholarships. He got about 70 grand worth of scholarships from Ross and Columbia. He's currently studying at Columbia. Okay. And again, this is a quote by John Fuller, the former admissions director at Ross. He says someone with a 770 is much more likely to get a financial award. Why? Because the school may be buying that GMAT score. The third reason, and I said the most ignored reason, is essentially the delta in total earnings, probably something that a lot of people don't know of. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare two schools, Babson and MIT. Babson tier 2, MIT tier 1 school. But both of these schools are in Boston. Now Boston is really nice city to live in the US, and it's a place where the cost of living is not crazy high as is the case with New York or San Francisco or San Jose, and hence the salaries aren't crazy high. But if you compare the median starting salaries of graduates graduating from these schools, you're going to find this delta of about 40K. Now, these schools are 20 miles apart. So someone who's graduating from these schools has access to very similar opportunities. If you look at the average sign-in bonus, it's again a delta of 20K. So first year compensation median, the delta is about 60K or so. Now, the interesting thing is I graduated from Babson in 2006. And this delta that you see over here was merely 20 grand at that point. So 95 versus 115. Babson has remained at that point. MIT has gone up. This delta in sign-in bonus, we didn't have a sign-in bonus, so we had about 5 grand. MIT had about 12 to 13 grand then. Okay, but so if you take that delta of first year, you'll say, hey, the sign-in bonus is not going to be every year, so let's kind of reduce that to 45,000 to take that over a 10-year period. That's easily $500,000 or 450K. So 3 reasons why you should aim for a high GMAT score. Again, these 30 points, the 700 to 730 will be worth about $500,000. With that, I'd now like to invite Payal Tandon, the original creator of the meaning-based approach in GMAT SC, to go into the core of this webinar, which is how to ace GMAT sentence correction. Payal.
All right. Thank you, Rajat, for that wonderful introduction. And I hope that all of us are geared to get to that 730 score, 730 plus score. And for that, let's understand how is it that we can get to the 90th percentile ability in sentence correction so that we can get to that high GMAT score. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to not talk about how to get to the score or how to get to that 90th percentile ability. I want you to first try your hand at this question. We'll get into question solving mode right away. So solve this question utilizing whatever method it is that you use to solve SC questions right now. Okay, so as you just go ahead, solve this question. In terms of the time, I'm going to give you about 90 seconds to solve this question, but if I feel that many of you have not put in your answers, I will give you about 15-second warning for that. Okay, so If everyone can click on still solving, that way I'll know how many people are actively engaged in solving this question. And I'll give you about, I would say, 30-second warning when 50% of the class has put in the responses. All right, let's get more people to click on still solving. And I know this is going to become quite a bit of a habit as we proceed through this session and as we solve various questions. Okay, sounds good. And let's go ahead. Here's your question. Go ahead and solve this. All right, last 15 seconds. Okay.
Connected.
Okay, yeah. All right, so I'm going to end the poll now and I'm going to broadcast the results. All right, sorry about that. All right, so let's get into the discussion of this question. I see that 42% of the class selected choice E as the correct answer. Then beyond that, choice B was pretty popular, 22%, and then C and D had almost similar number of votes. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to first ask you what process did you use to solve this question. Now this is an official question, so let me get a poll here and we'll talk about what is the process that you use to solve this question. Here you go. Go ahead and just walk me through the process, and please don't use single line descriptors as single word descriptors. I want a little bit more detailed as to I first did this, then I did that. If you utilized a way to eliminate certain answer choices, definitely tell me that as well. So the more descriptive you are, the more I will be able to understand how you went about solving this question. All right, so I'm going to read through a few of them. Check the parallelism and removed other options. Parallelism, the word by. Meaning and comparison. All right, understood meaning, then parallelism. Avoided the portion within commas to get a better comparison. Okay. All right, so I see that quite a few faulty parallelism in this question. I see some of you responding in the Q&A part. 3-step strategy: understand meaning, search for mistakes, and correct the mistake. All right. Okay. Now, how many of you went through this thought process? And you can see the thought process stated on the slide. You first scanned the choices to find similarities or patterns, and you observe the choices C, D, and E, the last 3 choices, have the word by. A and B choices don't have the word by. How many of you did this as the first step? That you first looked at what the splits were, you saw that, okay, choices, the last 3 choices don't have the word by, the first 2 choices don't have the word by. Now, after you thought about that, now after you have made that observation, then you thought, okay, which split is actually the correct split? Right, so then you decided, okay, which split is actually correct. Sentence, the sentence says has less by government regulations, so it seems as if by split is correct, so then you rejected choices A and B. Now you were left with choices C, D, and E, and now you looked at choice C and you thought it was weird, the coming to an end, I mean, it just sounds a little weird, so you rejected choice C. Between choices D and E, you felt that E was better, the end of a period is a lot better. It is more parallel to the government regulation, right? So you rejected D and you selected E as the correct answer. How many of you followed the thought process that I've stated, that has been stated on the slide? You know, about 80% of the thought process. Quite a few of you, majority of you. Okay. Now, I'm going to ask another question. How many of you rejected choice C because it was weird? Now, whichever thought process you followed, but the one thing that you rejected choice C on the basis of was that it looked weird, the coming to an end. So majority of you. Okay. All right. Now, this is where you faltered. Choice C is indeed the correct answer. Okay. Choice C is the correct answer, which is something which majority of you rejected because it looked weird. Okay. And this is, as I said, this is an official question. And mind you, we are still talking about grammar-based question. This is still a grammar-based question. We are not even talking about communication-based question. This is a grammar-based question which you faltered on because again, we'll come to the causality in a bit. Okay. Essentially, just based on what we have learned so far, you cannot solve difficult questions by simply looking at the patterns of the answer choices. Okay, that pattern recognition, those splits and those things can work on easier questions because, again, after all, those questions are easy. They don't have that much of complications those many complications going on, right? But when you get to medium or difficult questions, you cannot solve those questions utilizing such pattern recognition. In fact, in order to achieve, for you to achieve that 90th percentile in sentence correction, you need to be able to solve difficult questions correctly, right? And you cannot rely on splits or pattern recognition to solve those difficult questions correctly. Now, how do you solve that problem? You solve that problem by utilizing the meaning-based method, which is the only method that you should use to solve questions, difficult questions, consistently correctly. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now solve this question utilizing the E-gmat 3-step meaning-based process. Okay. Now, I want to warn you that I'm going to go slow with this method because that's the whole mantra behind the method. You need to read the sentence slowly in order to understand each and every aspect of the meaning of the sentence, and that is what leads you to the correct answer. Okay, so I'm going to read the sentence slowly and I'm going to show you what is the extent to which you need to understand the meaning of the sentence. Okay, the overall slackening of growth and productivity is influenced. So overall reduction of growth and productivity is impacted less by government regulation. So there is a comparison. I see the word less and that tells me that there is a comparison. Less by government regulation, although that is significant for specific industries like mining. Now, what is significant? That is significant as in the government regulation. That as a factor is significant for specific industries like mining. Okay, so that was some additional information. Now we come back to the comparison part. Than the coming to an end. Okay, so now the author is comparing, is actually talking about what actually has a bigger impact. The coming to an end of a period of rapid growth in agricultural productivity. Okay. So this, the coming to an end, the fact that this period of rapid growth in agricultural productivity comes to an end, that aspect has a lot more impact on the overall reduction of growth in productivity. Okay, so if you think about it, what I've done right now is I have taken the sentence and I've split it into its smaller parts, right? And there are these certain strategic pause points that we basically teach you, and I'm going to talk about that in a bit. So essentially what I've done is I've taken the long sentence and I've split it into small parts, and I'm trying to understand what each part of the sentence means. Okay, and I'm putting together the meaning of that sentence as I'm reading these various chunks. Okay, so what I've understood so far is that there are multiple aspects, right? The first aspect is that the sentence is explaining the factors behind reduction in growth and productivity. Aspect number 2 is that this reduction happens because of two things. The first thing is government regulation, and the second thing is the fact that this period of rapid growth in agricultural productivity comes to an end. Then aspect number 3 is the author has presented a comparison, and he's saying that number two has more impact than number 1. Okay, the reason number 2 or the factor number 2 has more impact than factor number 1. Okay. So I've taken the sentence and I have understood what all various aspects the sentence is trying to communicate. Okay. Now I'm going to ask you this question. I want you to read through these aspects once again, and I want you to tell me which aspects of these of the meaning as I stated you were not able to understand when you read the sentence on your own. I'm going to show you a poll in which you can put in your answers. And you see 2-1 and 2-2. 2-1 is for government regulation. 2-2 is for the fact that the second facts as I stated. And for those of you who were able to get all the aspects, well and good, you guys can select none as the correct answer, as your choice. Alright, I'm going to broadcast the results now. As expected, aspect 2, majority of people or people who were not able to understand at least one of the aspects actually faltered with aspect 2-2, which is that you were not able to understand what the second factor is. What is the second factor that the author is talking about? The second factor over here is that the fact that a period of rapid growth in agricultural productivity comes to an end. That aspect, quite a few of you were not able to understand. Okay. Apart from that, aspect number 3, that there is a comparison stated and that number 2 has more impact than number 1. That's another thing which quite a few of you were not able to understand. Now, I want you to take this information, and as we look at the answer choices on the next slide, I want you to understand I want you to draw that linkage in your mind to see how did your analysis of or lack thereof of the original meaning lead to you selecting incorrect answer choice. Okay, so I want you to think about that. I want you to draw that linkage in your head as I do the rest of the analysis. Okay, all right. So now what we're going to do is second step is in the three-step process we need to identify what are the errors in the sentence. Yeah, so if you look at it, less by and than, so after less you have the word by, but after than you don't have the word by, and almost everyone in the class was able to identify this as an error, right? So from the standpoint of error analysis, there isn't a whole lot that's going on. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at each of the answer choices. Now definitely choices A and B are gone because they don't have the word by, so that part of analysis also stays true. But the interesting thing is when we come to choice C. Choice C, the choice that majority of you, about 85% of you rejected because it was weird, is indeed the correct answer choice, because that is the choice that explains aspect 2.2 in the right manner by the coming to an end of a period of rapid growth in agricultural productivity. Okay. Now, if you look at choices D and E, they're both wrong. They both change the meaning of the sentence. There isn't anything wrong in choices D and E from grammatical standpoint. The only reason why these choices are wrong is because of the meaning change. What choice D is saying is that the reduction is happening by the action of ending of this particular period. That's not what the author is saying. The author is saying that the very fact that this period comes to an end, that is what leads to that is what is the factor, right? Now, if you look at choice E, that also changes the meaning. What this is saying is that the reduction happens by the final part of this period, and that's a completely different meaning. It could be logical, right? But it's completely different from what the author is intending to say. We've used, actually choices D and E completely changed the factor number 2 from what the author intended to communicate. And that's why choices D and E are wrong. Okay, I want you to take a look at, spend a couple of seconds looking at this slide and just try to understand how is it, try to make that interconnection which I wanted you to make. Why is it that, how is it that by not understanding aspect 2.2, you got to the wrong answer choice? Because that is the key learning that I want each one of you to have. So spend a couple of seconds just looking at this, absorbing this information, and then I'm going to talk about, we're going to move on to the next question. All right, what do you think now? What's your observation? Why is it that you made a mistake? What have you concluded? Fail to understand the meaning of the sentence, that I'm still bad at understanding the meaning, missed the change of meaning, didn't pay enough attention to the meaning behind it. Okay, overlooked meaning in its depth. And see, it's not that you don't know how to understand the meaning. It's just that you don't pay that much attention to meaning. Many a times when students say that I use a meaning-based approach, what they end up doing is they simply utilize meaning as one of the error types. Until the time you continue using meaning as one of the error types, you will not be able to get to the essence of the meaning-based approach, which is to understand the meaning completely. Okay, there is no point in rushing through the sentence if you don't even understand what the author is trying to communicate. Okay, so that is one major shift that I want all of you to do, and you will realize as soon as you make that switch in your mind, you will start to make a lot more sense out of sentence correction questions. SC will become really an enjoyable experience. Okay, right now, just many of you feel overwhelmed with the grammatical rules. You would no longer feel that way. Okay, you just have to make that switch in your mind. Okay, and just think about it. GMAT sentence correction is a test of meaning and logic. The GMAT as a test institution, MBA schools, your admissions committee, they are not really looking to get grammarians in their class. What they are looking for is, are the people whom I'm selecting, are they able to understand and communicate appropriately? Okay, and that is what the intent behind each and every verbal section, each and every verbal subsection on the GMAT is. Okay, taking SC as an example, can you understand the intent that the author has? And once you understand that intent, can you present that intent in the correct form? Okay, that is what the whole point of this is. Okay, and the very fact that you rush through reading the meaning of the sentence, that you rush through the process and you end up not understanding what the author wants to communicate, is actually goes against the first question, because you cannot understand what is the intent that the author needs to present. Okay, so always begin with understanding the meaning of the sentence, and you need to have that 100% understanding. Okay, that is very, very important. Okay, complete understanding of the meaning equips you to answer difficult questions. Okay, I want you to, while you're learning the process, what I want you to start doing is that if you are not able to understand the meaning, I don't even want you to go into the answer choices. Spend as much time as it takes to understand the meaning. Understand why is it that you're not able to understand the meaning of that part. Okay. Now, let's do quick observations about this question. This was from OG Advanced, question number 285. The reason why you got to the wrong answer over here was you were able to reject just two choices utilizing splits and grammar. The two incorrect, which is choices A and B, which are choices A and B. Two incorrect choices D and E were grammatically correct, but they changed the meaning, and you were not able to reject them on solid grounds, right? So again, 100% meaning understanding is required. Okay, now 25% over there is the accuracy for this question. Okay, now we're going to go to second question, which I want you to solve utilizing the meaning-based approach. And truly meaning-based approach, meaning that you are understanding everything in the sentence before you move ahead to the answer choices. Okay, so here you go. And before I do that, let's get the poll. All right, so can you all please click on still solving? All right. There you go, solve this question, and I will show you the question. Just hold on. There you go, go ahead. All right, last 30 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. All right. So how is this question? So I'm going to tell you the correct answer. For choice B is indeed the correct answer, which about little less than half of the class got. So let's look at how you guys perceive this question. Easier than the first question, difficult, okay? Did you guys intentionally apply the meaning-based approach? Were you able to, did you read the sentence in order to understand what it's saying? Paid attention to the meaning, okay? Long read approach of understanding the meaning, easier than the first, okay, all right. Did but got confused, all right, good. The meaning-based approach made it easier, made it easy to crack it, okay. All right, applied meaning-based, first went to C, then came to B, okay, interesting. All right, so let's go through this. I'm going to use this question, again, I'm going to apply the meaning-based approach to solve this. Now, one thing which I just want to make sure that you all understand is that when a sentence is completely underlined, it's very difficult to identify the similarities and the dissimilarities in the answer choices, right? So I hope that you didn't really waste your time in looking at what's similar and what's not similar among the answer choices, right? So the key thing over here is, again, it's you need to regardless of whether the sentence is partially underlined or completely underlined, you always should understand the meaning of the sentence. Don't rely on just identifying the similarities and dissimilarities. Okay, so let's come to the answer, the question here. Bring back the poll. Because diegetic music, okay, and again, notice where all I'm pausing. So when you see the structure of the sentence over here in this part of the slide, you can see all the points where I'm pausing, okay, and there is a reason why I'm pausing at those points, okay. Because diegetic music actively referenced in the film rather than confined to the background. Now, what does this part tell me? Actively referenced in the film rather than confined to the background. What is the purpose of this part? It's a modifier. What is it modifying? What is the purpose of this? It's giving me more information about diegetic music. Absolutely right. Okay. All right. And what is it telling? That it is actively utilized in the film rather than just staying in the background. Okay. That's what diegetic music is. Invoking a sense of verisimilitude. Now, what is this part doing? This part is also describing diegetic music, and what is it saying? That it invokes a sense of verisimilitude. Okay, so it's giving a characteristic of diegetic music. Now, many of you may have felt, oh, verisimilitude, I don't really understand the meaning of this word, but that's absolutely fine. You don't really need to know meaning of all these, heavy words. In fact, the author is so kind over here. He's explained what verisimilitude is. The idea that art can express a truthful version of reality. Okay, that is what verisimilitude is. That it's the art can actually can actually present what the reality is, right? The version of the reality. Okay, filmmakers creating period dramas use it often. Okay, so this part by itself is straightforward, that filmmakers creating period dramas use it often. But how many of you felt that, okay, till this point, I'm reading about diegetic music and its features and whatnot. Now, all of a sudden, a new entity, filmmakers who create period dramas use it often, comes about. How many of you felt that awkward jump? Absolutely. You felt that awkward jump, and rightly so, because there is that awkward jump in this sentence. Okay. And that's the power of reading the sentence slowly. Okay. You read the sentence slowly and you are able to identify such jumps in the sentence, and these jumps actually relate to certain kind of errors. So it's good that you were able to identify that. Okay, but even if you identify an issue, right, it's very important to understand what is the author, what is the author saying. Okay, so we still need to contextualize the entire thing. Okay, now essentially what the author is saying is, and again this is an exercise that you need to do for each and every question. Okay, regardless of easy, medium, difficult level, any question that you're solving, always write down what are the aspects that the author is communicating. Okay, aspect number 1. Feature of diegetic music has been presented, actively referenced instead of being stuck in the background. Okay, that's the first thing. Second thing, diegetic music invokes a sense of verisimilitude. Okay. Third thing, filmmakers who create historical dramas, period dramas means historical dramas, okay, use diegetic music often. This should be used, not used. Okay. All right, so these are the 3 aspects. Now there is one additional thing that needs to be there, which is that there is this word because, right? In all these 3 aspects, is there any causality? The 3 aspects as listed over here, have I listed out any causality? I haven't explicitly stated that there is a causality, right? But I know that there needs to be a causality because the word because exists in the sentence. Okay? And this is where the problem is in this sentence. Okay? The jump that you experienced with the filmmakers popping up in the sentence, the word because exists, but there is no understanding of what the cause and the effect is. That is the problem in this sentence. Okay? There is the word because, but the author fails to mention what the causality is. Now, when you experience such a problem, okay, do you then jump over to the answer choices to look for the solution? What would you do? There is a problem in the sentence, that goes without saying. We have identified 3 aspects of the sentence, but we do know that there is one major thing that we were not able to identify. Now, whenever you experience such problems, what would be your next step? Would your next step be to move over to the answer choices and look for clues in the answer choices to help you figure out what the answer is? And majority of you are saying yes to that. The answer is no. I don't want you to jump over to the answer choices just yet. Okay, I want to make sure that you understand all the aspects of the meaning. Okay, meaning that's all the aspects that are present and the aspects that are not present, and I'll talk about that. Why do I say that? Okay, whenever you read the sentence, right, you get these aspects, you always have to ask the question, does that make sense? Okay, in the event that the aspects that you have gathered don't make sense, you need to infer what could actually make sense. Okay, and that is very, very important. You need to, in this case, you know that because presents causality, you know that there has to be a causal relationship. The author fails to mention that causal relationship. So it's your job, before you start looking at the remaining 4 choices, it's your job to infer that causal relationship. Okay, you still have to do that one extra step. Failure to do so will definitely lead, or I would say in most cases will lead to you selecting incorrect answer choices, or it may lead to you getting confused between the final 2 choices. How many of you have experienced that scenario that you're able to reject 3 choices but you're stuck at the final 2? How many of you have come across that scenario? I'm pretty sure almost all of you. One of the reasons why that happens is when you don't infer what you needed to infer, when you don't do that thorough analysis to the level that you needed to do before you look at the answer choices. Okay, so you can prevent that from happening by following the meaning-based approach in the right manner. Okay, so now let's come back over here. Over here, We need to infer the causal relationship. Now, you do know that there are these three aspects, right? There is nothing wrong in these three aspects. Now, which ones actually can you connect using a causal relationship? Which ones actually can be connected utilizing causality? Clearly, if you think about it, DM invokes a sense of verisimilitude, right? What was verisimilitude? That idea that art can express a truthful version of reality, right? Now, sorry about that. Yeah. Let me just remove the scribble here. Yeah. The idea that art can express a truthful version of reality, right? Now, filmmakers creating period dramas. These filmmakers are creating historical dramas. So they would want to express the truthful version of reality. They are not living in whatever they are depicting has already happened in the past. So these guys, these filmmakers definitely require something that can express the truthful version of reality. So clearly, aspect 2 and 3 are the ones connected in causal relationship. Because diegetic music invokes that sense of verisimilitude, filmmakers who create historical dramas use diegetic music often. That is the logical causality. Okay, you need to infer that before you move on to the answer choices. Okay, so again, I'm going to read this verbatim from the slide. When you do not get 100% clarity in meaning, always spend a few seconds more on the original choice to infer the information from the sentence before you look at the answer choices. Failure to do so will lead to you being confused between the last two choices. Okay. Now, in terms of error analysis, and again at this point in time, the error analysis seems almost, inconsequential. Why? Because it's obvious that, there is, because diegetic music, there is no verb for DM, right? So that's the issue. So that's the reason why this choice is wrong. Okay. Now we take a look at each of the answer choices. Choice B, and actively referenced in the film rather than confined to the background. Now, what has happened here? One major thing that you should do is, when you're reading the sentence, it's always important when you're splitting the sentence, you know that, okay, the author can simply move these pieces around. So think about the sentence not as a whole, not as each and every word being an individual entity, but consider a group of words, logically put together group of words to be an entity. Okay, when you do that, you can simply move the pieces of the puzzle together to come up with what the author intends to communicate. And there is more than one ways to structure the sentence. And that's why having that sentence structure understanding is very, very important. Okay. Now let's take a look at choice B. Actively reference in the film rather than confined to the background. Now what the author has done in this choice is he's taken up this section and he's put it up front. But as long as the meaning of this part is, as long as this part is still communicating the same meaning or is still playing the same role, this movement is absolutely fine. Okay, so diegetic music, that's what this part was supposed to modify. That's what this part is actually modifying in choice B. Diegetic music is often used by filmmakers creating period dramas because it invokes, now here, because it invokes, absolutely correct. It has maintained what the inferred meaning. Okay, the idea that art can express truthful version of reality. Again, all the pieces have been put together appropriately in order to communicate the meaning over here. Okay, now let's take a look at choice, and again over here, aspect 1, aspect 2, aspect 3, and causality, the inferred causality, all of those need to be correct along with the other grammatical errors. Okay, now let's take a look at choice C, and let me bring the poll over here. Choice C was indeed one of the popular choices. Here it is. 16%, so basically choices C and E both were equally popular, I would say. So let's take a look at why did people select choice C. What's happening in choice C is the causality. Each of the three aspects are fine. Okay, each of the three aspects is fine, but the problem is with the causality. And here, causality is actually with aspect number 1. Aspect 1 and 3 are linked in causality, and that doesn't make sense. And there's somebody who said that sometimes we might infer the wrong cause and effect, and you're absolutely right. But you will infer the wrong cause and effect if you're not completely immersed in the question, if you don't understand the logic behind the various aspects. Okay. The key thing with sentence correction is, and again, it's because people focus so much on grammar that they forget about the main logic aspect of it. Okay, the minute you bring back the logic, you will not really have any issue with sentence correction. Okay, now in this case, if you look at choice C, it logically doesn't make sense. What does it say? Grammatically, it's absolutely fine. Filmmakers creating period dramas often use diegetic music, which invokes a sense of verisimilitude. The idea that art can express truthful version of reality because it is actively referenced in the film rather than confined to the background. Now, what is this choice saying? That filmmakers who create period dramas use diegetic music because of the manner in which it is used. Does that even make sense? Yes or no? Does that even make sense? Filmmakers use it because of the manner in which it is used. That doesn't make sense at all, right? So again, grammatically, there's nothing wrong. And now here, I'm going to ask a question. For those of you who rejected choice C, why did you reject choice C? Quite a few of you rejected choice C. The verb is incorrect. Causality is missing. Causality is actually incorrect. That's what, it is not linked to anything, okay? It has no issue. It over here definitely goes to diegetic music, okay? So if you rejected, I know quite a few of you would have rejected choice C because they felt that the pronoun is ambiguous, but there is no issue with the pronoun here, okay? And again, it's very important to understand the correct reason behind an answer choice being incorrect. That's very important, okay? The perceived meaning with respect to causality seemed wrong. Absolutely right. That is indeed the correct answer. Okay. Now, one thing that I want all of you to understand is whenever you are reviewing the solutions, and I will talk about this in a little bit more detail, but I want to just touch upon that. Whenever you're reviewing the solutions, look at each and every the explanation for each and every incorrect choice and make sure that you rejected that incorrect choice for the right reasons. Okay, because that's the way that you're going to improve. Okay. All right. Now again, this point is very important. If you had not inferred the correct choice or the correct meaning up front, you could have selected choice C very well. Okay. Now let's look at choice D. Choice D, there are quite a few issues with choice D. Aspect number 2 is not correct over here, which is that DM invokes a sense of verisimilitude. So again, that is an issue. Causality is also not correct. Now choice E is wrong because there is no causality whatsoever. All the 3 aspects are fine, but there is no causality, and quite a few of you selected, about 42 people selected choice E. Okay, and again, causality doesn't even exist in choice E. It looks pretty pristine. There's nothing wrong in it from meaning perspective. Meaning is logical, but there's no causality. The word and or since have been changed into and. Okay, so which means that there is no causal relationship at all. Okay, so again, choice E is wrong. So the thing over here is, without you getting that 100% understanding of the meaning, it is very difficult for you to solve difficult questions. Okay, and I have a couple of questions in the Q&A pod. When the sentence is completely underlined, how can we presume its meaning? Well, you can presume its meaning because the author is not dumb, right? The author is presenting you the information, right? So it's your job to understand what the author is saying, right? Just because the entire sentence is underlined doesn't mean that the entire sentence is incorrect. I think that's the connection which you are making, which is an incorrect connection. Just because the sentence is underlined doesn't mean that the entire sentence is underlined, doesn't mean that the entire sentence is wrong. All it says is that there are multiple ways. The test maker has more room to move things around and come up with multiple sentence structures, introduce more errors and whatnot. Okay, so again, you have to understand the intent of the author is to communicate the meaning, right? So think of author as your friend so that you understand what the author is saying. Okay, your job is to understand everything that he's saying so that you can communicate that in the right manner. And maybe the author has done a good job, so in which case choice A is the correct answer. Okay. All right, I have a question. Does this mean you do not need to use all those numerous grammar rules in SC ever as long as you stick to this technique? Ayush, good point. I'm not saying that you don't have to use those grammar rules, but you don't have to go into those nitty-gritty rules, right? I mean, at a high level, if you think about it, so let's go back to this sentence. At a high level, we are actually using those rules. For example, actively referenced in the film rather than confined to the background, this is a modifier. We need to know how modifiers are used. Invoking a sense of verisimilitude, invoking is a verb ing modifier that's modifying a noun here. So I need to know what the role of these different grammatical entities are. Right? So from that standpoint, the utilization of grammar rules is important. Then if you think about it, logically speaking, forget about sentence correction. Any language that you learn, language is a means to communicate, right? Now, how can you communicate effectively? When everyone who knows that language is working along the same set of constructs, right? Now, that is what your grammar is. Because if you're working on a different set of rules and I'm working on a different set of rules, then you and I can never communicate, right? You and I can communicate only if you and I are both utilizing that same set of constructs. And that is what the role of grammar, understanding the grammar rules is. The problem that people face is that they forget all about the intended purpose behind the grammar. And they get into the nitty-gritties of the grammar itself. They forget about the grammar as a means to the goal, right? So they forget about the goal, and that's why they remain stuck in the means. And that is what I don't want you to feel, okay? I hope that answers your question, Ayush. Is E a wrong sentence if we ignore the causality part? Now, we cannot ignore the causality part because that is a main part of the sentence. Now, let's say if choice A did not have any causality there, because wasn't there, it was straight up just two different facts, then choice E could very well have been the correct answer choice. Okay? All right, so appreciate that, Ayush. I'm glad that you got that. What else? Okay. What was wrong with the original sentence? Swati, you will need to take a look at the recording, but I'll just mention that. Original sentence, there was no verb for diegetic music. There was no connection. There was no causality. That is what the cause and effect relationship was not. There was a causality, but it wasn't explicitly stated. Okay. All right. So let's now to make some observations about question number 2 as well. This was an E-gmat question, 100% underlined. Okay, and the splits were not possible at all. There were 2 incorrect answer choices, C and E. Both were grammatically correct, but both had meaning change in their own ways. Right. So again, 100% understanding of meaning is required, and at times you may need to infer the intended meaning, and that's very, very important. Okay. All right. Now we're going to move to question number 3. Okay. I'm going to show you that question, but first let me just hear about. I've been talking a lot. So what do you guys think about whatever we have done so far? And actually, let me give you another poll because I do want to keep the comments because it's important for me to know your comments time and again so that I can, tweak what I'm doing or, continue with what I'm doing based on how you are receiving it. Again, communication, very important. Very helpful. Tell me, what is it that you have learned? What is it that you were not doing? Helpful even though I got the answers correct. I love that attitude. I mean, thank you for explicitly stating that. Many a times, we actually get to the correct answer and we think, okay, I got it correct. I don't really need to go through the explanations. But it's very important. I tell all my students, when you're solving the questions, right, it's not just important to answer them correctly, it's even more important to understand whether you got to the correct answer for the right reasons. That's very, very important. Okay. Now, I was actually waiting for someone to talk about speed, and it's actually surprising that many of you, that this question didn't come up early on, or maybe I might have missed it. Wondering if this would be time consuming, right? And if I may just correct your spelling, it's not wandering, it's W-O-N, so apologize. Whenever I see some spelling mistakes which are very glaring, I just correct them, so sorry about that. Didn't mean to put you on spot. Yes, so wondering whether it would take more time. There was somebody else who also said the same thing. Now again, initially when you're answering the questions, when you're learning the process, it is going to take more time, okay? This is not a magic. This is not a magic trick, right? This is you building a skill set, okay? And whenever you think about learning any skill, you need to give yourself enough time to internalize that process, okay? So today when you're learning this process, today when you've been exposed to this process, the first question, or let's say when you solve question number 3, you're not going to solve it using the process correctly in less than 90 seconds. That is not going to happen, okay? That's for sure, okay? But as you start to apply this process time and again, question after question, consciously correcting your approach, learning the approach, utilizing the application files in the course, utilizing the solutions that we have, this process will become second nature to you. What's going to end up happening is, when the process has become second nature to you, you would look at a sentence, you won't even worry about looking at the answer choices. Your whole, the purpose of your being at that particular time would be to understand what the author is saying. That is the level that you're going to get at, okay? And that is definitely going to happen only if you are 100% committed to learning the process. Right? So initially when you're learning it, you are going to take time. And again, ask yourself, go down the memory lane and tell me, what was a new skill that you learned? What is one of the new skills that you learned? Maybe in your childhood days, or maybe recently you started learning a skill. Tell me, what is the skill that you learned? Guitar, Google AdWords, cooking, trading, tennis, and then now new language, okay, debugging, graphic designing, riding a bike, a new software, swimming, badminton, right? Now tell me, when you decided to learn the skill, were you skilled in it right off the bat? Paragliding, interesting, E-gmat approach, all right. So now tell me, were you skilled in it right off the bat? Were you able to do that skill within right away without, with the same level that you are in right now? No. There was a lot of error. It required a lot of practice, right? And that is the key thing over here. You have to apply, you have to practice it. And again, you need the right kind of coaching, right? Or you need the right kind of guidance, or the right kind of process to learn. And that is what you will get in the E-gmat course, okay? So that is, the practice makes a man perfect. Again, utilizing the right kind of tools, that's very important, okay? So that is the key thing over here. All right, so good. Thank you for bringing that question up, and I'm glad that all of you get this. So now let's come back to question solving mode. Question number 3. This is also a completely underlined sentence. Yes, it is a completely underlined sentence, and let me get the poll. There you go. Can you please press yes? Oh, sorry, still solving. All right, here you go. All right, last 15 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Interesting. So choices D and E have an almost similar split. Okay. I won't tell the correct answer just yet, and in fact, I will not solve the question on my own. I would want you to solve this. So I'm going to ask you certain questions and see what your level of understanding of this, the meaning of the sentence is. Okay. So let's see. Now, what is the author talking about? What mountainous regions is he talking about? Read the sentence and tell me where are the mountainous regions? In Ethiopia, right? Mountainous regions of northern Ethiopia have been discussed. Okay. Now, the author says, and tell me if this is right or wrong, if I simply read what the author is saying, the mountainous regions were chiseled from solid rock centuries ago. Many of them chiseled from solid rock centuries ago. This is modifying mountainous regions. So essentially what the author is saying here is that these regions were chiseled from solid rock centuries ago. Is that logical? Hello everyone, can you guys hear me now? Yes, no? Sorry about that. There was some glitch at my end. Okay, so thankfully you guys can hear me now. Okay, all right. All right, so don't, okay, good. I'm so glad. Okay, so let's come back to this question. Where were we? Just give me 1 second. I need to set myself up over here at this other computer, other setup. Give me just one couple of seconds, people. Thank you for your patience. Okay. Okay, so we were at the fact that it doesn't make sense to say that the mountains were chiseled from the solid rock, right? So now in that case, you always have to question, okay, what does make sense over here? Okay, what makes sense? Is it does it make sense to say, if it doesn't make sense to say that the mountains were not chiseled from solid rock, then what was chiseled? Chiseled means to cut in shape. Absolutely right. So when you read the word, these regions are marked with hundreds of monasteries. When you read this phrase, you get the sense that, okay, these monasteries were the ones that were chiseled from solid rock. Okay, now I can see that there are a couple of you who are still having problems with the voice. Let me just make sure that the voice is clear. Can you please press yes if the voice is clear? Okay, all right. Sorry, I want to make sure that the voice that there are no problems with the audio. All right. Okay. So aspect 2 is not logical, so you always have to figure out what is actually logical, right? So again, that's something which is very important. Now this is a question from the official guide, from the official guide for advanced questions, question number 257, and it's a communication based question, right? So again, always verify whether the sentence makes logical sense or not. If it doesn't make logical sense, you need to infer the logical meaning, and that's something which we saw for the previous question as well regarding diegetic music, right? We had to infer the causality. The same way we need to infer what is the logical meaning here. Okay, so the logical meaning is monasteries were chiseled from solid rock centuries ago. Now, what's wrong in this sentence? Again, it's a modifier issue, right? So that's the issue over here, which is what led to the incorrect answer. Now, choice B is wrong. Again, I won't go into choice B. Choices D and E is where the split was. Quite a few of you selected choice D. Again, in this choice, it's basically you have an issue with you have the same issue as is in choice A. Let's look at choice C. Choice C was also selected by a few people. Here, again, the issue over here is R dotting, right? From the standpoint of meaning, this sentence is correct, okay? But the issue over here is R dotting. That's an issue, okay? R dotting means that there is that continuity of action, which means that right now, if you see these mountain regions are actually doing the action of dotting, and that doesn't make sense. It's not a continuous action. Okay, so that's why this choice is wrong. Okay, now let's take a look at choice D. Choice D says, the mountainous regions of northern Ethiopia are dotted with hundreds of monasteries. Many of them are chiseled from solid rock centuries ago. Now here also all the three aspects are fine from meaning perspective, but you look at what this is saying, are chiseled from solid rock centuries ago. Again, verb tense issue. There is that mismatch of verb tense, okay, such that it's leading to illogical meaning, okay, and that's why choice D is wrong. Are chiseled is present action. The correct action should be in past tense because this happened centuries ago. Okay, very minor thing, and that's what led. But if you don't pay attention to that, you will end up selecting incorrect choice. And again, if you think about it, are chiseled. Again, think about it from logic standpoint. And whenever you are considering grammar rules, Consider them from logical perspective. Are chiseled from solid rock centuries ago? Does that make sense? No, it doesn't make sense. Okay, that's the issue with this choice. Choice E is absolutely correct. And again, many of you may have rejected choice E, and correct me if I'm wrong, you may have rejected choice E because you felt many of them chiseled from solid rock centuries ago. This sentence structure didn't seem familiar to you. How many of you rejected choice E for the reason that the sentence structure is a little bit unfamiliar? I mean, that I'm not familiar with that sentence structure. Many of them chiseled from solid rock centuries ago. Now, this is a noun plus noun modifier structure. And again, there are certain structures that you may feel that, okay, you're not familiar with, but that's where utilizing courses which expose you to such to such structures is the key. Okay, there are certain things which you definitely need to be more familiar with. Okay, all right. So again, what we have, I don't need to go through this one. We can just carry forward here. So again, don't take things on face value. Just because it's stated there doesn't mean that it's logical. Always have to question, does this seem logical or not? Okay, so very, very important. Oh, sorry. So again, in this choice, splits were misleading. Okay, and I know we didn't even go into the splits because again, you guys selected choices between you guys were confused between D and E, so that's what we focused on. Choice A was incorrect grammatically, was incorrect. It was grammatically correct but illogical meaning. So again, always have to verify if the meaning is logical. If it is not logical, you need to infer the meaning. Okay, so if you think about it, if you compare sentences 2 and 3, we had to infer the meaning in both of these, right? But the difference between sentences 2 and 3 is that in sentence number 2, you knew that there was something missing. Okay, it was incomplete to begin with. Whereas in sentence number 3, the sentence looked complete, right? And that's where even when the sentence feels, even if you feel that the sentence is complete, there isn't anything wrong, you still have to question, does that make sense? Does it make sense? Get all the aspects out, figure out, does each aspect make sense? Okay, and that is very, very important. Now, I know a couple of you are asking them versus which. That is not an issue in this sentence. Either of them is correct. Okay. All right. Now, one thing I do want to ask you is, what source do you utilize for solutions? Okay, for the SC questions, and that's very important. And you always have to, you should think about, does your source provide you solutions to such level of detail? Okay, we went through 3 questions. We went through them in detail, going through the meaning analysis, questioning the meaning, does it make sense, and whatnot, right? So you always have to make sure that the solutions that you are using actually provide you with all that information. Because if you don't get that information, you will not be able to improve. You will not know where you are going wrong. Okay, and just so you know, each and every solution in the E-gmat platform, whether it's an application file, whether it's in practice file, Scholaranium questions, or official guide questions, have solutions that are created utilizing the meaning-based approach. Step 1, understand the meaning. If the meaning is whether you need to infer the meaning, whatnot, so all the processing that is required, all the processing that we did today on these 3 sentences, all of that is done on each and every question in the platform. Okay. Step 2, identify the errors. Not just 1, not just 2, all the errors that exist. Okay. Step number 3, analyze the answer choices. Not just, okay, this is correct, this is wrong, or this doesn't make sense. I mean, it basically goes into the details of what's correct in each choice and what's not correct in each choice. Okay, so that's very, very important. So make sure that whenever you are preparing, your time is precious. Okay, keep that in mind. Your time is precious, right? You have to manage your time across so many different things. So it's very important that whatever time you're spending, whatever time you've dedicated for your GMAT preparation, that time is effective. You're effectively spending that time, which means that you need to invest in the resources that give you the right kind of structure, so that you can the right kind of content, so that you can utilize that content to improve. Okay. So with this, we are at question number 4. This question is from OG Advanced, and I am going to, so I'm going to give you this question. To discuss this question, I'll invite Rajat back into the session, who's going to take this session from this point on. So I just want to let you know that that it was wonderful explaining these 3 questions to you, and I really, really hope that you get to that 90th percentile in sentence correction. And if you have any questions of how to prepare, definitely reach out to us. But right now, let's solve question number 4, and good luck. Try to apply each and every aspect of the process that we talked about. Understand the meaning, read it slowly, make sure that you understand each and every aspect of the meaning. Question, does each aspect make sense? And if it doesn't make sense, infer and then move on. Okay? All right, so here you go. Okay, before that, I want you to, sorry about that, I want you to still select on still solving. There you go. Please click on still solving. All right. Here you go.
All right, guys, you guys are done. I'm going to give you another 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll. I am going to broadcast the results, and what we see is what we call as a split jury. If choices B, C, and D, each one of these choices is quite popular. Also, choice E is very popular. And again, someone was asking me this question: how do you figure out the meaning of a question which is completely of sentence that's completely underlined? I'm sorry, and all right, guys. Let's hope the audio is clear now. My apologies. For some reason, the entire network connection went away. So yeah, it's clear now. That's perfect. My apologies for that. Uh, so let me just get back to this. I'm gonna clear the poll once again. Thank you very much. So, what was I saying when you guys lost me? Can you remind me? What was I saying? If you can put this, yeah, choice B is popular, starting as well as choices C and D, and choice E is also quite popular. And so someone asked this question. It says, hey, if you have a completely underlined sentence, and this was, I think, asked for the prior question, how do you go about inferring its meaning completely? And or how do you figure out how do you go about understanding its meaning? And the answer is you follow the same process. You actually pause strategically, you read the sentence slowly, and then you infer the meaning using logic. And let's kind of look at this over here. Thank you very much. So this sentence says a star will compress itself into a white dwarf, a neutron star, or a black hole after it passes through a red giant stage, depending on mass. So let's kind of split this, and it's fairly clear how you're going to strategically pause and split this. So a star will compress itself into one of these three things. So these three things are a list. So these over here, this is a list into one of these things after it passes. So what does this it refer to in the short answer poll? Let me just, what does it refer to? The star itself. Yes, logically it refers to the star. It passes through a red giant stage depending on mass. Okay. Now, when you think about this and you really say depending on mass, it doesn't make sense that, depending on mass, this entire phrase is right next to the red giant stage, but it doesn't make sense over here. Why? Because the mass of the red giant stage should be dependent on the mass of the star. So logically, the depending on mass should modify the star, and that's where, even though from a classical grammar standpoint, this answer choice is correct. From a logic standpoint, it doesn't make sense, and which is where the error in this particular answer choice is. Now, I'm going to go forward. I'm not going to go into the same level of detail as we went through in the other answer choices. Why? Because essentially you guys now know the drill. So I'm going to focus on choices B, C, and D, as well as choice E. So let's look at what happens in choice B. After passing through a red giant stage, depending on its mass. Okay, now who does this word its refer to? Can you say with 100% certainty that it refers to the star, or or uh, or does it refer to this? What does this refer to? It could refer to the star or the red giant stage. Absolutely correct. Because of this pronoun ambiguity, choice B is incorrect. And let me just go over here. Because of this pronoun ambiguity, choice B is incorrect. Okay. Now, if you were to really say, how can it refer to both? Think of constructing a parallel sentence with different entities in a sentence, and you could really see how in a different context, in a different scenario, it could very easily refer to the red giant, to the equivalent of red giant stage over here. Oh, yes. Okay, let's look at choice C over here. What's the problem with choice C? What's the problem with choice C? What is passing through the red giant stage? The star or a star's mass? What is passing through the red giant stage? It's a star, right? It's a star that is passing through the red giant stage, not a star's mass. Okay, and because of that, because this is logically incorrect, because this part is incorrect, you reject choice C. Because that's incorrect, this is why choice C is incorrect. For those of you who chose choice C, is that clear? Okay, so I'm going to explain again. Let me just clear this. Let me just draw a parallel sentence. Hold on. Let me just go into a parallel sentence for choice C over here. So, after going through the IPO process, a company's profits define its market value. Now, what goes through the IPO process? What goes through the IPO process? Does a company or its profits? The company itself. So when you say after going through the IPO process, a company's profits, that is incorrect, right? That is incorrect. Can all of you see this? Right? So when you see this, that's the same error that choice C makes. After passing through the red giant stage, a star's mass, the star's mass doesn't go through the red giant stage, the star by itself. Okay. Again, if you have doubts, you can put them in the Q&A pod. over here, and Shraddha would be happy to answer that. Let's look at choice D, which is our correct answer. Mass determines whether a star, okay, after passing through the red giant stage, will compress itself into a white dwarf, a neutron star, or a black hole. Mass of what? We're talking about the star, right? Mass of what? We're talking about the star. So that is our official correct answer. Okay. Choice E essentially has the same error that choice C, where it over here in choice E refers to this part over here, the mass of a star. No, so okay, that's a great question. In choice D, mass of what is not clear. All right. The second thing is, doesn't option B mean that mass will pass through the red giant stage? No. Let's kind of look at that. And again, please put those questions in the Q&A pod. That way, Shraddha can give you much more detailed answers. Okay. So mass determines whether a star after passing through the red giant stage. So what is passing through the red giant stage over there? What is passing in this case through the red giant stage? A star. No, the mass is not. What is after passing through the red giant stage next to? A star. Let's kind of take, let's take the same example that we took. Where is my notes pane over here? Okay, notes 59. Hold on. We need to name these notes. Just give me 1 second. Yes. Let's look at the same thing. I should say IPO. Profits determine whether a company, after going through its IPO, succeeds. Okay. So, what is going through its IPO? The company. What's going through its IPO? The company. It's very clear. The profits don't go through the IPO. Right? And again, that's why I say when you are confused, put the same sentence in a completely different context over here. Okay, let's just look at the same say. Now I'm doing choice E over here. E, the profits of a company. You can just actually imagine this by yourself. So do the profits go through the red giant stage, by the way? Do the profits go through the red giant stage, or do the profits go through the IPO? Yeah, so again, now you know why choice E is wrong. The mass of a star, the profits of the company. It should be the company over here. All right. Okay. So I'm going to move forward again. You're going to have the recording over here. If you guys missed it slightly, you guys can always watch the recording. But I need to move forward. Choice D. So this is also an OG advanced question. It's a 700 level question. Again, like as was the case in other questions, choice A was grammatically correct, but the meaning was illogical. In the other choices, the main error that was there was pronoun reference. And again, if you understood the meaning, one of the things that you guys, what your doubts are telling me over here is that even though you understand the context of you understand the concept of modifiers, and many of you do understand the concept of modifiers, when you're applying that concept, that particular concept in the context of different sentence structures, you struggle with it. Why? Because you're not able to figure out where does the pronoun antecedent, what does it apply to, what does the modifier modify in the end, and because of that you make mistakes. So one thing hopefully that we've been able to impress upon to you in this particular session is that acing GMAT SC is not about knowing the concepts. It's about being able to apply those concepts in a logical fashion on in different contexts. And when I say context, different with sentence structures of different quality. Is that true? Have we been able to actually impress this upon you? It's not about knowing the concepts over here, right? It's about being able to apply those concepts in a logical fashion, and which is where you need that meaning-based approach. So, all right, that's good to know. And again, you can put in yes, or you can put in your comment over here. Either way, it would do. So that's there. Now let's kind of really see, how do you get that? Knowing concepts, is fairly simple, but how are you able to understand this in the context of different sentence structures? How are you able to apply this consistently? And to do that, I'm going to ask you this question, and then this is a yes/no poll. How many of you have spent more than 25 hours preparing for GMAT sentence correction? Select yes or no, 25 or more hours. Okay, about 40% of you. Let's get a few more responses. I have about 210 students here in the webinar. The question is, how many of you have spent more than 25 hours preparing for GMAT sentence correction? About 38% of you. Now, the next question is only for those 38%. Do you feel, if you spend 25 hours or more, do you feel you are at that 90th percentile? Only that 38%. Just about, at the most 5% of you feel that you're at the 90th percent. Okay. And then the other piece, which I think I don't need to ask the question, is do you approach every question using the meaning-based approach? And this is something which I want to impress upon. If you want to hit that 90th percentile, you've got to approach every question using the meaning-based approach. And when you make a mistake, you have to do a strategic review of this so that you don't repeat the mistake. The worst thing that you can do while preparing for the GMAT is blindly practice. Why? Because when you blindly practice, you don't improve as you solve more questions. And what happens in the end is you run out of good quality questions and you still remain at the same time. The worst thing in this is you lose confidence in yourself. Has that happened with anyone over here? You've been putting in that effort, and the more effort you put in, the more you get disheartened. Why? Because you lose confidence in yourself and you say, man, this is too hard. It seems some people can do it, but I cannot. Okay. And this is what happens with a lot of people, unless and until they change their approach. And here's an example of a guy who scored 760. And he says, with regards to the meaning-based approach, he says there's no comparison. Prior to using the meaning-based approach, I was lost in 2 out of 3 of 5 answer choices. So prior to scoring 760, he still had a 690, by the way. Okay, this guy was still at a V32, but he was stuck over there. Okay, and then he says, with the meaning-based approach, my mind was at ease. I could see the core of a sentence, understand what the author wanted to say. I could see the genesis of the sentence. I could see the various appendages. So this guy is a doctor by profession, hence appendages. I was rejecting answer choice on solid grounds, and my verbal score improved from, you can see, the V32 to V42. V42 is a 96th percentile on GMAT verbal. Now, this improvement took about 20 days only from that V30 to V42 to V42. But it did not come with a ton of practice. The primary driver over here was a change in approach. And what caused the change in approach? Mental toughness. And again, here's another guy who went from a 700 to a 770. Again, V34 to a V42, if I remember correctly. He says the meaningless approach is a game changer. Before this, I was learning just the grammar. This guy's a Canadian, by the way, but I was unable to solve 700 level questions. And he says when you get to that 700 level question, grammar is not going to be the deciding factor because you'd always have two options left. And for those of you who've spent more than 25 hours, this is something you guys have already seen. You feel this today. Okay. And the only way you'd be able to get to the correct answer is using the meaning-based approach. All right. So now let's talk a bit about concepts here. You know, even because when people think about concepts, they think about them in a non-detailed manner. And let me just tell you, you know, when you think about concepts in GMAT Sentence Correction, how many concepts do you worry about learning? How many concepts do you worry about learning? Can you just put in your answers in a short answer poll? When it comes to GMAT SC, how many concepts do you need to learn? Oh, you do need to. Okay, some, very few, around 10 to 15, just the type of errors close to 20. And that's kind of the problem when you really see this. When you think about GMAT sentence correction, you think of concepts as subject, verb, modifiers, pronouns, tenses, parallelism or lists, comparisons. Some of you think of meaning as a concept. Those are not concepts. Those are categories of concepts. When it comes to GMAT sentence correction, you need to be able to master 200 concepts. And when we say 200, they are in the same categories that you talked about, that you know, the same 7 to 8 categories that we talked about. But at a conceptual level, the first question that we solved today, you saw that two non-standard forms were parallel in an official answer choice. That's a sub-concept in parallelism. You know, I shared an article with you, which is this amazing article that Shraddha wrote about 8 years ago. This is 8 years ago when we were doing this, by the way, that verb ed and verb ing forms can be parallel. You don't really need to have only ed forms, all ed forms in a list or all ing forms in a list. Is that a concept of list? Yes, but it's a sub-concept over there within this. So when you think about this, to achieve that 90th percentile, you need to know these concepts in the context of various sentence structures and how you need to test this. It's not just about those 8 concepts that you really see. Okay. What evidence do you have that you've mastered these 200 concepts? What evidence do you have? Especially if you're studying using a book. What evidence do you have? Can you tell me? Oh, mock test doesn't test you 200 concepts. Most people have no evidence that they've mastered these 200 concepts. A mock test will just tell you this is your SC ability, if at all that mock test measures ability. And by the way, other than E-gmat's mock test, there are no other mock tests that will tell you your SC ability. They'll give you your SC accuracy, but they will not tell you your SC ability. Okay, because other than our mock test and other than the actual GMAT, no other test is built on ability. That's why. And to really see this, how many of you can really say that you guys understand whether verb ed modifiers are verbs or modifiers, which means what are the various cases in which verb ing modifiers and noun plus noun modifiers, you know, can be used interchangeably. When I say interchangeably, to communicate the same meaning. Okay. Again, same thing, relative pronoun modifiers. Which are the cases in which verb ing modifiers and noun plus noun modifiers, you know, can replace one another? What scenarios are those? And similarly, a bunch of these over here. Now, how do we know that people struggle with this? Because of the volume of students that we get and the kind of doubts that we get. We know people struggle with this. We know people who read books 10 times still don't master these. Why? Because they don't evaluate you on this. They don't give you feedback on this. And which is where, you know, to learn these 200 concepts, you need to make sure you learn them individually, you refine them, which means you first need to get feedback on them, and then you can think about hitting that 90th percentile. Otherwise, what you would end up doing is basically solving questions again and again, repeating the same set of mistakes, and your score will feel stuck or will remain stuck. Okay. How do we do it? We actually do this using 500 plus examples in the SC course. Yes, you go through 500 plus examples. These are not exercise questions, by the way. These are examples and practice questions. Our scholarinium questions, our mock test questions, completely different. Okay. Now compare this to about 8 to 10 points, and you really just see that this is a very, very different feedback mechanism. So let me just give you an example over here to really just tell you how this actually helps you improve. So I'm going to take a case study overall of this guy, and where essentially we give you feedback at a conceptual level, at an application level, upwards of 100 times in SC. So here's a guy who scored V38, not a super high score, but essentially you'll already see how feedback helped him improve because he was stuck like many of you. Here's a subject verb module in the paid part of the course, and what you see in this module over here is that in subject verb application file he did not do really well. He scored just 60%. But if you notice the amount of time he took, he looked at each and every solution, and he understood why he made the mistake, because of which he was able to get 100% in the next file, which is the SV practice quiz. Okay. And that's what the power of feedback is. It tells you you're faltering somewhere, you spend time reviewing it, and right away you can evaluate yourself. Let's look at a few other areas. This is the verbs part. What you see over here is he did really well in the verb sequencing and verbs application. But the other piece which you also see is that even though he did well, he spent a good amount of time in these two files over here, making sure that he understood everything. Now, he made 2 mistakes in verbs practice quiz, which is the final thing. And he didn't leave it at that. When he made those mistakes, he bookmarked those questions. You can really see these over here. He bookmarked those questions, and our platform allows you to do that so that you can revise this, so that going forward, you know these are the areas that you need to improve upon. Okay. Because he took this feedback very seriously, he took the corrective actions right then and there. He didn't rush through the course. He made sure that he understood everything. He was able to improve his SC to about 85th percentile or so. And what he said was, for me, the biggest thing regarding SC was the application of concepts. My concepts weren't bad in the first 2 attempts, so he struggled, as I said. But where I struggled was the application of concepts. And what is application of concepts? Applying this in the context of various sentence structures. And again, like others, he said the same thing. He says you'll be able to narrow it down to 2 by using splits, but after that, it's the application that helps you improve. So one of the things that I want you to really say is, if you want to be like these people who get into these top schools, who get these scholarships, then make sure when you're learning, you learn slowly. When you're learning, you take feedback very seriously. Okay, and when you're learning, aim for that 90th percentile. And I just want to reiterate the 90th percentile piece over here. Getting to that 90th percentile means you're telling me that I'm going to be among the top 10% of test takers worldwide, which includes the natives, by the way. And to do this, you've got to master the meaning-based approach. And you've got to look at GMAT Sentence Correction as a set of not just 8 concepts, but 200 odd concepts that are tested in various contexts. And you've got to be able to learn how to apply them. Okay. And again, if you're an E-gmat student, make sure you use this feedback. In fact, when you do poorly, you get feedback not just in the file. We send you the messages in an email as well. Make use of those feedback points. Take corrective action. And as you continue to take corrective action, when you see you're taking corrective action, you get more personalized feedback. The extent of personalization is increased. The system is designed to do that. Okay. The other piece that I want to make sure that you do is make sure you do a strategic review or a causality analysis of why you faltered. And to do that, you just don't need solutions that give you the splits. You need the detailed solutions that we provide. Why? Because it tells you where you faltered and why you faltered. And if you want to build an impactful error log, this where and why are two things that you rarely need. With that, I want to thank you guys for joining me today. It was a pleasure hosting you guys over here. Hope you guys had fun as well. And at this point, I'd truly like to get some feedback over here. Let me just hide this. So if in the short answer pod, you could give me some feedback, as well as I'm going to share the session file as well with you as well. The PDF is right here. And if you can give the feedback over here in the short answer pod on the top right hand corner, that would be great. And at this point, if you have any question, please put that question in the Q&A pod, which is in the bottom left hand corner. Also, remember this, we have some upcoming webinars over here. Let me just share those with you. So from where can you get personal assistance? We can help you create your personalized study plan. If you go to our PSP page. So if you're someone who's not an E-gmat student, which means you can't access our personal study planner, you can essentially go to a PSP page and you can do that. You can access, you can schedule a session with one of our strategy counselors. Eugene says, as a non-native student, what can I do if some wordy words don't allow me to understand the whole meaning? Eugene, as you go through the E-gmat course, you'd go through all the contexts over there that can be, that you're likely to see. So once you've understood the concepts, once you've internalized the approach, and you're practicing questions from the E-gmat platform, you're going to get to those level of questions where you'd struggle with this. As you look at the detailed solutions, you're going to find that your ability to solve such questions improves. How will your course be helpful for someone who already took coaching? We personalize your learning. We'll figure out where you stand, and in fact, we can help you figure out where you stand. You're using our free mock. So, and then from there on, I mean, our students have built upwards of 20,000 study plans over here. So here you can take a free mock over here. Leo says, I'm an E-gmat subscriber. I got 100% in master comprehension section. Is it good or same result for most students? So it means, Leo, when you get 100% is that you understand how to split the sentence into various appendages, as Rohit Malan would call it, and so that's something which is there. Now, a number of students get that 100% because what it means is you have the right foundation. From master comprehension, you've got to move to essentially the sentence correction course or the critical reasoning course. Do our study materials also include official guides? They don't. We have an OG Scholaranium, but you're required to have the official guide. We give you detailed solutions, way more detailed solutions than what the official guide provides. But there's no one who can legally give you official guide. Why? Because it's essentially a license to it's owned by the GMAT. So, do you practice these concepts in the video course, or is there an ebook from E-gmat? We hate books, by the way. We hate books. Why? Because books are not dynamic. Books don't customize themselves. We do everything using beautifully created e-learning. And then our e-learning is not, we hate to call them videos. Why? Because to create an hour of e-learning, we spend about 80 hours of effort. And it's dynamic, it adapts to you. So every click you make when you're going through our concepts is captured. When you're scrolling your mouse, we capture that. We actually build that technology ourselves. There's no other company in the world that has that technology. I should correct myself. There's no other company in the GMAT prep space that has this technology. This technology was originally created as a part of effort by DoD, which is the Department of Defense in the US, and it evolved from there. Does your course include personal assistance or guidance? Akansha, the course includes a personal study planning companion. The course includes unlimited GMAT strategy support. So if you're stuck, you can contact us. The course includes support for your doubts with regards to subject matter, and support for your doubts with regards to if you have any technical difficulty. Just to really tell you, our SLA for 80% of our functions is about 18 hours. For about 100% of our functions is about 24 hours or 1 business day is what we call it. And I was just looking at the stats last week. We met our SLA for just 3 emails last week, and we get about 1,000 emails a week or 1,000 queries a week. So that's how particular we are about our SLA. Sahil says, can you score 700 without the E-gmat course? That's a good question, Sahil. You can score 700. It's the same way you can be a billionaire without going, or you can become a CEO without enrolling into a business school. Yes. So it's not a must, but it increases your chances of success significantly. Sanya says, how much time will it take for me to complete the E-gmat course with a 3-hour, if I put in 3 hours of study? Sanya, as I mentioned earlier, everyone's different. I mean, some people need only 12 days to reach their target GMAT score. The question is not about completing the E-gmat course, it's about reaching your target GMAT score. And so others need 3 months. We tell you how long you're likely to need. For example, let me share this with you. If you watch this over here, what you're going to find is that this particular student was able to go from a V34 to V42 in about 13 days. There are others who took 2.5 months. And we personalize your learning. So if you want to know how long you're going to take, have a session with one of our GMAT strategy counselors. If you have a mock test, if you've taken the E-gmat Sigma mock test, we can tell you, with an accuracy of about a week as to how long it will take for you, depending on the number of hours that you commit. We have AI tools that do this. What's the period of the course? It's 6 months. So when you buy the course, you buy it for 6 months. And let me actually give you. And by the way, we have a deal going right now. We for coronavirus, we've done a deal. So you're getting GMAT online for $299 right now. So if you want to buy and avail a discount, this would be the time to do this. And Sanya, I sent you the link to a Sigma X mock. Take a mock, then schedule a session with our counselors separately. If you want to buy just verbal, can you do that? Absolutely, yes. So if you go to our buy page, you can see that you have the option to buy just the verbal section or the quant section. So we do sell both. So yeah, you can go to our buy page to do that. Do we help with the application process for MBA schools? We don't. That's not something that we do. We actually work with some of the top admission consultants, as well as we also work with the GMAT. So So I'm going to share a playlist with you in which you can really see folks from the GMAT presenting. You can also see so here is here's Seher, who's a marketing manager at the GMAC. She's presenting over here, and again in the same playlist, you can really see other top admission consultants. So if you work with us, we recommend you to top admission consultants if you need help. Um, I myself have done a bunch of this. I had multiple full fellowships when I applied for my MBA, but again, it's not something that we can do really well at scale. Admission consulting requires a lot of personalized effort and technology. We've not built the kind of technology where we can do justice to each one of you with regards to your profiles for B school applications. So which is where we still refer you to top admission consultants. Namrata says, what happens in the consultation for E-gmat strategy? So Sandeep, I'm assigning this to you. If you can send him the consultation link, that's something that would be there. Anish says, how much time should you take to solve SC questions? Anish, different people take different amount of time, but the range is between a minute to a minute 35. Dhaval says, how many questions do you need to answer correctly to get into the 90th percentile? Dhaval, it depends on this. I mean, I will tell you, let me just share something with you. So if you look at this debrief, and the nice thing about this debrief over here is that that essentially this guy not just improved from V17 to V40, but he made a ton of mistakes in his in the last part of it. So you can download the ESR over here. You can see the ESR, and what you're going to find is because he made mistakes on difficult questions, he could make as many as 12 mistakes in the verbal section of the GMAT. So you can make mistakes as long as you make mistakes in on difficult questions. Akansha says, does your verbal course include more personal assistance? Akansha, we do not differentiate between whether you buy a verbal course or a GMAT course. If you buy a verbal course, you'll get assistance on verbal. If you buy the GMAT course, you're going to get assistance on both quant as well as verbal. So you will, and I want to be very clear. This is not a tutoring course. Just to set you the context, our GMAT instructors typically, we don't offer private tutoring, but if we were to, we'd charge about $150 per hour. But the reason why we don't go into that business is because our goal is to provide, be as effective as a private tutor at the price, which is way less than a private tutor would charge. And we invest all our technology. We have a 7-person technology team. We have a 10-person SME team, both working full time. We have a 7-person GMAT strategy team working full time. We spend our R&D dollars into making sure that we get there. And I can tell you that we are about 6 months away from being as effective as a private tutor. And we're way past the effectiveness of your classroom courses. So that's something which is there. But we're about 6 months away from getting there. So you'd get a ton of support, but I will tell you, don't expect that someone is going to call you and really just say, hey, this is where you're going wrong. No, that the system is designed to tell you where you're going wrong. A private tutor doesn't give you feedback 100 times when you're studying SC. A private tutor gives you feedback probably 7 to 8 times because you're going to spend about 10 hours on SC with a private tutor at the most. Here you get feedback 100 times. Do we have any support for doubt clearing? Yes, a lot of support for doubt clearing. So we solve close to, and Shraddha will probably have the right numbers, but we address about 500 doubts a week our experts have addressed upwards of 50,000 doubts. So every entity in the E-gmat course has its own dedicated forum. And the beauty of that is, you have a doubt while you're watching one of our e-learning courses, or while you're solving questions, right? And next to the question, you have a forum over there. Now, if you're practicing in our Scholarium platform, and if you doubt against choice A, you can see all the doubts that have been posted against choice A. And only our experts respond to those doubts. So 99 out of 100 times, even before you ask your doubt, it would have been responded to. If it's not been responded to, post a doubt and you'd get a response from our experts, and I reiterate, from our experts in one business day. So Sania, does that help? Perfect. Do you get any mock test with Verbal Online course? You get one mock test, which is a Sigma X mock with Verbal Online course. You guys can also get GMAT Club tests. But if you truly need mock tests, Rahul, just go for GMAT Online. You get 10 mocks with GMAT Online. You get the expanded Scholarium. I mean, even if you don't need a whole lot of the quant part, it just the entire set of mocks, it's going to be worth your while. Okay. Any other question that is there? How many mocks come with GMAT Online? You get 10 mocks, and these are 10 full-length mocks. In addition, you get Scholarium Platinum, which has as many questions as you would get in about 15 mocks. Okay, and then you get your GMAT Club tests on top of them. So you would not run out of practice questions, by the way. You'd probably use 30% of all the practice questions in GMAT Online. Vishal says, please specify the ending time of the webinar along with the starting time. Vishal, we can specify the starting time very clearly. The ending time depends on the number of doubts that you guys have. So it's become slightly difficult for us to specify that. But most webinars are about 2 hours to 2.5 hours. So this one's at about 2 hours and 21 minutes right now. And again, our goal is to make sure that we stay back towards the end to address your doubts. So one of the things that I would really say is that if you bought our course, also join us on YouTube. Also subscribe to join us on LinkedIn. We share a bunch of free articles. So we have an entire E-gmat support team. We have a 3-person support team. All it does is it writes articles to help you choose the right business school, to help you make the right decisions with regards to how do you position yourself in leadership essays. How did a particular student go from working at Infosys to really getting into a Ross, and so on and so forth. And this is something that we do, not because we make any money off it, but because we feel that that's kind of the least that we can do to make sure that we help you with the eventual goal. Because no one's taking the GMAT for the fun of it. You guys are doing it because you want to get into a certain business school, and which is where we write about 5 to 6 blog posts every couple of days or so. So for example, here is over here. Here's a Pawan says, I'm an E-gmat student. I've utilized all my Sigma mock tests. Can I get a few more mocks? Pawan, it's a Sigma X mock takes about 3x as many questions as you get served in the mock. But if you've utilized all your mock tests, write to us. We can tell you how to simulate a mock test using the questions in Scholarium. What is a Sigma X mock test? Okay, it's the world's only mock test that gives you your ESR plus analysis. So So this is something that we launched last year, and you can really see how insights from a Sigma X mark power your score improvement. These marks do not include AW and IR. No, we have probably the world's most comprehensive IR course, but these marks don't include that um, over there. It's just B schools focus on your verbal and quant scores only. They don't focus as much on AW and IR. Okay. With that, guys, I want to thank everyone for joining me today. And again, if you've not registered for this webinar, in which how do you get into Harvard Business School or Harvard Kennedy School or Stanford, do register for this. This webinar is on Tuesday at 8:30 a.m. Pacific or 9 p.m. Indian Standard Time. So you can click on this by register now. You can register for this by clicking on the register now button over here. And again, if you want to see webinars on critical reasoning, on reading comprehension, on number properties, if you are registered on our YouTube, if you're connected with us on our YouTube channel, you can see some of those webinars over there. Okay. With that, I want to thank you guys for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you in the webinar tomorrow on number properties. Goodbye, study well, and have a good day.